Basically, on the barn right now.
We're just waiting for the other board members to come. It is after 6:30, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Could everyone rise? We're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call, Debbie?
Andrew Benson,
Here.
Doug Hay,
Here.
John Pelosi. Here. Joseph Wetmore,
Here.
Edward Levine,
Had a personal matter he had to attend to, so here I am in the middle.
So Andrew Benson will preside over this meeting since Supervisor Edward Levine is absent.
Okay. It's very good to see everybody in person. It was a very interesting time to be able to Zoom. Ed and I, and Debbie and Patrick, we usually were here in person, but others, were at home. So it's really nice to see everybody, really, really good. Okay, I'd like to open up a public hearing for proposed local law number 2 of 2021, and it's to consider overriding the tax levy limit, which we do almost every year, just in case. So we're going to open it up at 6:36, 6:35?
6:33. I usually go by the official.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just looking at the clock.
I'll move that.
We need it.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Okay. Joe moved it, Doug seconded it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So has anyone come tonight to talk about this or ask questions?
You
Okay.
have to wait 1 minute.
Yeah. I know we do have to wait. Yep. As I said, we do this every year, just in case. But usually our tax, when we have a new budget, we tend never to exceed the tax limit increase. I guess we will close this public hearing. Thank you. Could I have a motion to close it?
Sure.
Doug moves it. Joe seconds it. I think we vote on it, but Debbie calls it.
No, we vote on it, consent. That's where it's listed.
The resolution's in the consent, but
The resolution's in the packet. We're just moving to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, at this time, we have a presentation from Insero and Company CPAs, and it's about our 2020 audit presentation. Thank you for coming.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'm Patrick Jordan, the audit partner with Insero. Travis Buckley is a senior staff accountant with us, and did much of the audit, supervised the field work, prepared the financial statements, and really did a great job with it. So we dropped off drafts last Friday, so we haven't had them a long time, so definitely if you have any questions that came up with the time you have had to review it, definitely try to answer those questions. We'll also just try to cover all the documents by going through the executive summary. Let me know if this is loud enough, first of all, or...
can everyone back here?
So the executive summary on the first page indicates all of the various reports that are with you in draft form. The first one, the basic financial statements, is the key one, the largest one. It's the big bound packet. It's probably 70, 80 pages long. has all of the funds, all your funds that you report to the state on your annual update document. Has a lot of footnote disclosures related to the funds, and also there's basically another set of financial statements that we talk about, which is the government-wide, and that takes your fund financial statements and brings in a whole bunch of other things like liabilities for the retirement systems, the New York State retirement system, your retiree health insurance obligation, and also on the flip side, your assets, your capital assets, your infrastructure, buildings and equipment, and all that comes in. So there's a big difference between your net position, shown on the government-wide financial statements, and your fund financial statements. And there's a couple reconciliations in the main report, and there's also on the very last page of this executive summary, I kind of summarize those reconciling items from the fund financials to the government-wides. But just going to, for now, go through the first page of the executive summary. Again, the overall results, again, very positive for the most part. Most of the funds stay pretty consistent from year to year, and we've talked in the past about the level of fund balance, your unassigned, unappropriated fund balance being at a healthy level. All the main funds are listed for a 5-year analysis following this first page, but we'll look at those in a bit. Our audit report, our auditor's opinion, is unmodified on the basic financial statements, which is a clean opinion. That's what you want to have. Any modifications are departures from generally accepted accounting principles. There's also an unmodified opinion on supplementary information. That's your budget comparison, your budget to actual comparisons, and some other supplementary schedules, combining schedules and all. There's also at the very end a report in accordance with government auditing standards. It talks about compliance with laws and regulations, and also internal controls. And so we didn't have any matters to report in that letter on compliance or non-compliance or internal control weaknesses, and that defines the internal controls, the weaknesses, significant deficiencies, and material weaknesses in that letter, but we don't have anything to report in that. And, or any other audit matters. That really goes pretty much, kind of mirrors the management comment letter, which is one of the documents. And again, we don't have anything to report in that letter other than upcoming future accounting standard updates that will have to be evaluated and adopted if necessary. Halfway down, again, on page 1, communication with those charged with governance. That's should be the second letter in your packet, but just to cover those 9 or so bullets, talks about qualitative aspects, where you'd find accounting principles or accounting policies in the first note to the financial statement, and that goes on for quite a while about all of your revenue policies, the budgeting and all, and that section also in that required communication letter talks about if there were any new accounting standards that had to be adopted, which there was. There was a GASB 84, which is a governmental accounting standard board. That's a governing standard setting body for governments. That just basically wiped out your agency fund, took that away, and reports the agency liabilities and other funds now. And Travis, you had mentioned that Charmaine had pretty much cleared out those liabilities ahead of time before they even had to move into other funds at year end, so kind of payroll-related liabilities and that sort of thing. That was the only accounting standard update that had to be adopted. All other policies and accounting standards were consistent, and nothing changed from prior years. The rest of the letter talks about any difficulties encountered performing the audit, corrected or uncorrected misstatements that we had to make, disagreements with management, other findings and issues. We didn't have anything other to report in that. And for any of those areas, everything, again, the audit process was fine. Travis, you can talk more about it, the timeline and how Charmaine was prepared for us.
Yeah, so we came in the mid-April range, and we started the audit. Everyone was very prepared for us. Charmaine had uploaded the AUD prior to our arrival, which was a huge help for us so that we could hit the ground running. Everyone was very professional. We had a very easy time with this engagement. And so I just wanted to thank the staff involved and, yeah.
Thanks, Trev. So just continuing down, talked about the management comment letter. One of the other parts of the audit is the justice court. So we do audit the books and records of the justice court, and basically for whether the court properly collected, recorded, remitted the bails, fines, and other charges, and any monies on hand at the end of December 2020 were all, accounted for. We knew where they were to be paid out subsequent to year end. So again, all the opinions, all the reports, very positive. I think I covered everything as far as all the documents that you have in front of you. So on page 2 starts the fund financial statements. The main report just has a one-year model for the most part. The management discussion and analysis gets into a little bit of comparative with 2020 versus 19. And that's a really good section to look at, and gives a lot of information about the two sets of financial statements, some of the variance and fluctuations and reasons for them, some highlights, financial highlights and all. So going just through, this is basically a condensed financial statement on page 2 and 3 of your general townwide. Again, you see all the, just down at the bottom section, your fund balances, again, pretty consistent at about the 1.2 million, 1.3 million, so it was just down by about 34,000 for the year. Some restricted, some assigned, which is your appropriated fund balance for next year, and then your unassigned, a healthy 891,000, consistent with the prior years. And we'll skip over page 3 is the revenue and expenses for the general fund for all those 5 years. And again, at the bottom, we talked about the change for the current year, just a slight decrease of 34,000. You can see the prior year had a large transfer out, which caused the net decrease in that fund for last year of 700,000 or so. Page 4 again is one of the funds is general fund outside the village. Again, had about a $114,000 increase for the year. You can see the total fund balance at the bottom again, 416,000 up to 530. And we're comparing that with the overall budget of that fund. It's very, very healthy. So that really continues on with that theme for the highway fund, townwide, the highway fund, outside village. Then we get into sewer and water. For the most part, pretty consistent. The water fund, and those fund balances are at a good level. The big swing, that only stands out overall, fund-wide is the water fund. You did invest some money in capital assets, some equipment, some vehicles and such, about $600,000 or so. And that was the primary reason for the $500,000 change in the water fund for the current year, or 2020. Other than that, it would have been pretty consistent. Again, sewer had a very minimal change as well, $40,000 swing, and pretty consistent back through 2016. So on page 14, it does talk about reconciling your fund balances. So there's about 4.8 million in fund balances, and which was up considerably from the prior year, about 2 million or so, but that was only primarily between the water fund that we talked about, which was a decrease, but that was offset by bands that were carried in the capital project fund. So short-term debt is carried in as a liability in the funds. Once it's converted to long-term debt or permanent financing, it comes out of the funds as the liability, is actually recognized in the fund, in the capital fund as revenue, proceeds of obligation. So that basically swung the overall change in fund balances by that $2.4 million, which is just converting short-term debt to long-term debt. Other parts of that I talked about, from the funds, we had in capital additions of capital assets of about 12 million, the Bolton Point joint venture equity of about $1.6 million, and then deduct as a deduction from the fund balances, bonds payable which are not recognized in the funds, installment purchase debt, compensated absences, the ERS liability, your proportionate share of the ERS liability, and the OPEB, the other post-employment retiree health insurance, which is provided through an actuary report that you hire an actuary report for. And so that takes your $4.8 million fund balances up to 12.2 government-wide net position or equity, when you look at the government-wide financial statements with the infrastructure and all the debt included. So that's just a brief, summary of the financials and the highlights of the financials, the funds, and the government-wide, and didn't plan to open the main document or walk through that full audit report here tonight, but if you had questions, if you did get a chance to look into it and have any questions, we'll try to answer them. Overall, again, our process very well. I think we're a little ahead of normal, to present at this July meeting. Bullet point report was ready and final, or at least in draft.
It was in draft.
The numbers should not change, so that sometimes delayed it, as well as, other things. So, questions?
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a question about generally how we handle some of our accounting. Line 1170, A1170, which is an income line for our franchise fees from Spectrum. Now, the way that's handled is apparently when we pay the county money from the franchise agreement, it gets subtracted from that line. And I'm not familiar with income lines having money taken out of them in the middle of the year, and I find that confusing because I'm looking at that line to see how much we've received in franchise payments, and I'm not seeing that. So, for example, in March, when I looked at that line, we received a franchise payment of $853, but that line showed a negative $536 because we paid the county $1,300 in shares of franchise fees that we're supposed to share with them. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm not able to understand what's going on from the way accounting's happening. I wonder if that's standard, or am I missing something?
It didn't really come up during our audit procedures, I don't believe, but I think I've seen it either way. If that's your net cost or your net revenue, I guess. If the money comes in and part of it goes back out to somebody, I've really seen it presented on a net basis. If that was just your share of the revenue.
Well, I mean, we just paid out part of it. I mean, we had an expense from there that we paid to the county, and normally that comes on an expense line, so I can see, we paid this money to the county, this money came in. And I'm not sure why you didn't see this as part of your audit, because when you sent a questionnaire around to us, I specifically wrote this up.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll miss that.
Conrad.
Okay. Well, we'll follow up on that. I guess the only thing would be if it had to be grossed up, we would increase the revenue, increase the expense in that fund, the bottom line would still be the same.
The bottom line would be the same, but I have an understanding of how much money we've gotten from Spectrum at this
Well,
point.
we'll check it out, and definitely review it with the proper accounting standard and treatment. And I don't know what the total number is in that account, but we do work off of a materiality threshold as well. But if it was pointed out to us, we apologize that we didn't further look at that. Annual amount is about $1,300. See, that's something we don't probably spend a lot of time on an account balance of that amount unless it was pointed out.
It was pointed out.
Okay.
I'd like to hear which your answer is in the
Okay.
end when you have time to go over it. Thank you.
Okay.
Conrad?
I don't have questions right now.
Doug?
I'm fine.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, so let us know what the process will be. I guess if you need to, go through it some more and talk with Ed, and at some point accept it, or have us answer other questions and possibly
Yeah.
come to August
Yeah.
meeting or so.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a presentation from Yellowborn Solar. CS Energy, James Wayne and Mitch Quinn, is that right?
Quine.
Quine, sorry.
No worries.
Good evening.
Hi, everybody. I'm James Wayne, project developer for CS Energy. Here's Mitch Quine, development manager. We're here to give a little bit of an update on the Yellow Barn project. Last time, Mitch presented in October of 2020. This is going to be a similar presentation with just a few updates. At that point, we were planning on bidding into the 2020 NYSERDA RFP, but due to COVID and uncertainty, we decided to push it back a year, and we're going to be bidding into the 2021 NYSERDA RFP. So just quickly, a brief background on CS Energy. We are an experienced solar firm with 15 years. Yes, there's a presentation. Yeah. 15 years of experience across 14 states. We're both an EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction firm, as well as a development firm. So we've built over 1 gigawatt of solar in our time as a company, and also developed here in New York State over nearly 200 megawatts of solar, large-scale solar projects in New York State. One of those solar projects was the Brainstorm project in Washington County, which was celebrated by NYSERDA on Earth Day of 2021. There's a picture there. So, as you guys are probably well aware, in 2016, New York State passed the Clean Energy Standard and has since created robust and ambitious goals of 70% renewable energy statewide by 2030. And to put that in a little bit of context, only about 2% of the energy came from solar in 2019. So there's a lot of work to be done as far as building out solar in New York State, and CS Energy sees itself at the forefront of that energy transition. So the way that New York State manages that transition is through the NYSERDA annual competitive solicitation, and CS Energy has been a big part of that. We're constructing currently 7 large-scale projects across the state that we developed and have won awards through that NYSERDA solicitation process. And the upcoming 2021 deadline is August of this year, which Yellow Barn will be bidding into. So just a few updates, specific updates about our project, Yellow Barn. It's a 160 megawatt project located on 100 acres of land, which is intentionally sited on a mix of agriculture, forest,
1,000 acres.
Sorry, 1,000 acres. Did I say 100?
Yeah.
My bad. 1,000 acres of land, which is intentionally sited on a mix of agriculture, forest, and scrubland. And it's located on the town line of Groton and Lansing, just north of the Dryden border. Right now, currently, we have about 85% of that land locked up, and negotiations are ongoing for the remaining 15% of that land through options to purchase and options to lease. I think when Mitch was here last time, we weren't quite sure exactly where the project was going to be, but we're nailed it down pretty well now. About 75% of the project will be in the town of Groton, and 25% of it will be in the town of Lansing, and the point of interconnection where we're going to connect with the line is in Lansing. So the system is going to be a single-axis tracker system, which has solar panels that follow the sun throughout the day, go from east to west. We're going to be interconnecting with the 115 kilovolt line that extends from the Etna to the Cayuga substation. And through that process, we're going to be, hundreds of construction jobs, and when it's all said and done, the project will produce enough clean energy to power over 32,000 homes. So a scheduling update here. As I said, we're wrapping up the land acquisition here soon, and then there's 3 major state level processes. Number 1 is the interconnection studies, which happen with NYSEG and the New York ISO. There's also the NYSERDA RFP, which is this August. And there's also the Office of Renewable Energy Siting ORES permitting application process. If all of that goes well and comes out, then we hope to be planning on constructing in 2024. I just want to jump in quickly to those three processes, give you a little bit more detail about them. NYSERDA, the RFP, it's, as I mentioned, a competitive annual procurement process with companies from all over the world and projects all the way across New York State. 2021, they are expecting to award more than 4,000 megawatts of clean energy, of which we're very confident that Yellow Barn will receive an award as well. And we're hoping also to, along with that bid, submit an updated letter of support from the town of Lansing for that bid. The next process is the ORES, Office of Renewable Energy Siting, permitting application. A project of this size is required to go through by the state through that ORES process. It's comprehensive rules and regulations for these large-scale projects, and there's many studies that have to be done as well. So we're planning on submitting into that ORES process in middle of 2022. There's then a 14-month-ish review process. So we hope to have that completed by the end of 2023 or early 2024, at which time then we'll be able to start thinking about construction. To that end, we've hired third-party environmental consultants who have begun some of those studies, at least the desktop versions of those studies so far.
Not to interrupt you, but you have about 4 to 5 minutes more.
Okay, sorry.
So talk fast.
Got it. All right, so the last thing is the interconnection process. We're going to be working with NYSEG and the New York ISO, and we currently have a system impact study in progress. Hope to hear the results from that soon. And then the next step will be the class year study. And the last slide here is the community engagement plan. As part of the New York, the NYSERDA RFP and the ORES process, we want to be doing a community engagement plan with the town. And the next step for that will be to set up a website so that the community can access all that information and get frequently asked questions, things like that. We also want to work with you, the town board, to determine the best course of action as far as setting up town halls, information sessions, office hours, things like that. And this project is still early stage. We don't have all of the land control, as I mentioned. We don't have the studies back, so we don't know exactly where every panel is going to be. So I can't answer very specific questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions you do have, and Mitch will be here as well to answer questions too. So thank you very much for the time.
First, are there any questions from board members? Bronwyn?
I'm trying to orient myself a little bit on this map satellite view you have.
Yeah.
The proposed point of interconnection, what road is that?
Which page are you?
Oh, thanks.
It's on page 5. The proposed point of interconnection, I believe, is on Van Nostrand Road. Is that correct, Mitch?
Just off of Van Nostrand, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at that
Most
map.
of that road is in Lansing, right?
Yes.
In Austin?
Yes, it runs pretty much north-south through Lansing, I think.
Right.
Yeah. I think the town border of Lansing and Groton is 2 roads over from that. I think that's Cobb Street?
Cobb/Schofield.
Schofield.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Yep.
Helps me.
Joe?
Yeah, a couple of questions. So you're showing this large area, which I assume is not all going to be solar panels.
No.
Do you have some kind of approximation of how that layout is going to look? You know, is it really Swiss cheese, or do you have a big section and a couple of small ones?
So it is going to be like a big section, and I'd say about half of the site will be fairly concentrated, and the other half will be kind of spread out. It's tough, as James said, you know, we're hesitant to show something that either is going to look smaller, A, or B, show panels on land that we haven't, you know, made a deal with yet. So unfortunately, this is as detailed as we can show for the moment. But yeah, it's going to be, you know, a good portion of the site will be fairly concentrated near the point of interconnection in Lansing and Groton, there on the border, and then it gets into more of a spread out space as it moves into Groton.
Okay, so I'm looking at this and saying if you concentrate it in Lansing, are you really going to have 75% of the project in Groton? I mean, I'm trying to see how that's laying out.
Yeah, so if you see here, you know, the area that we have drawn here, obviously where the town border runs through, that portion that's being shown in Lansing is much more concentrated, and the area that's spread out throughout Groton is going to be, you know, much more ponding. So it will be about 250, we expect, of the 1,000-ish acres will be in Lansing.
My understanding was last time Groton had some issues with this. They weren't totally happy with it. Could you go into that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so they certainly have some concerns. I think the concerns that they have, which we see in a lot of towns, are you know, the fact that the state is so heavily involved in the process. They have concerns about exactly how the property taxes are going to work. And those are things that we've, you know, started to engage with them on and started to, you know, sort of open a dialogue around. So yeah, there's certainly, you know, there's work to be done there to educate and to, you know, come to middle ground on some of those pieces. But I think in terms of, they've said to us, you know, we're not opposed to solar. We don't have issues with solar. You know, we have these concerns. And so we're working to, you know, work with them to address those specifically.
So did they give you a letter of support?
They have not given us a letter of support at this point.
So could you tell me more about what the plans are for taxes?
Yeah, absolutely. So a project of this size, and really any energy project, is going to enter into a payment in lieu of tax agreement. So traditionally, we would negotiate that either with the county IDA or directly with the taxing jurisdictions, depending on everybody's sort of willingness and interest. Aside from that, and sort of parallel to that, our process as a company is always to enter into a host community agreement directly with the town, either prior to or in parallel with that pilot agreement. And the reason that's important is that we recognize that, you know, this project isn't sending any kids to school. This project isn't, you know, requiring a lot of services from the county, and therefore, you know, the town's sort of natural split of taxes is not really representative of the split of the impact, right? And so we make a very key point to make sure there's a host community agreement in place that the town can accept, you know, either in parallel with or prior to putting that pilot agreement in place.
I guess my biggest concern about this is I got a description of this project this morning, and I haven't had time to talk with the Groton people. I've reached out to them, but, you know, they're busy, I'm busy, we haven't gotten back and forth. And so I feel like I'm getting this at the last minute and not really having, you know, you're asking me to say, yes, I support this, but I don't feel like I really understand it and don't feel like I've had time to get input from important characters. Groton is clearly a major player here, and I haven't had a chance to really talk with them and feel like that I've gotten their input on it. And I feel uncomfortable moving ahead with this when most of it's in Groton, and I'm basically saying I support this thing that's happening in Groton, but I haven't talked to the people in Groton yet.
That's understandable. So I will say, I mean, this is the same project that we reviewed in October. Obviously, you know, I think the understanding of exactly how much of the project would be in each town is different. That's evolved. But you know, I apologize that you feel like this has been dropped on you. We didn't intend for that to happen. And in effect, you know, as James mentioned, our bid is in August. You know, if the board doesn't wish to issue a letter at this meeting, we'd be happy for it at the next meeting. Or if we, you know, if we don't receive a letter, we'll still bid. You know, we still think this is a good project. We think that we can effectively, you know, shield this project from view. We think that we can effectively mitigate a lot of the impacts that are of concern to a lot of folks with this project. And so, you know, we do still intend to bid, and we think it could be successful, but our hope is that, you know, Lansing would, in the same way that, you know, you issued a letter last year, would issue a letter this year as well, so.
I would certainly feel more comfortable with wait till August so I have a chance to find out what Groton says about it. I feel like I'm working with our neighbors, posted, telling our neighbor we want this to happen to them.
So if we did vote on a letter of support, we would wait till the August meeting?
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable.
Is that too late, or it's never too late?
Well, it's never too late. Our bid deadline is near the end of August, so I'm not sure what your meeting.
We meet usually the third Wednesday.
Yeah, so if the board did vote to support the letter, and we received it before I think the fourth week of August,
Okay.
that would work for us.
Okay.
But like I said, in either case, we'll still proceed with the bid. It's really, we're hoping to partner with the towns as much as we can.
Sure.
And we're hoping to sort of evidence that with the letter, so.
Great.
What about buffering?
Yeah,
That was
so-
going to be my question.
Yeah, so there are setbacks both in the Lansing town law, which you guys passed last year, and in the ORES regulations, where those setbacks in the Lansing law are going to be more restrictive than the ORES regs, which I think are only with respect to the setback from the road. The Lansing in the RA zone has a 60-foot setback. ORES has a 50-foot. We'll abide by that 60-foot setback.
Yeah, but what about the buffer?
And so the landscaping buffer is the next piece of that, right? So there will be, through the ORES process, a very robust visual assessment to determine, where are the areas that can be seen from the road, where are the
You
areas...
can't hear him back here, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let me lean into the mic.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
So like I was saying, in the state permitting process, there is a very robust visual assessment procedure that will be done that'll include 3D renderings, that'll include landscape architecture involvement, and it'll identify, areas that can be seen potentially from the road, areas that can be potentially seen from neighboring residences, and our intent is that we would plant, appropriate evergreen trees, staggered, I'm not a landscape architect, so I don't know exactly.
Well, it's been brought up before with like rows of evergreens and things of that nature, excuse me, in that nature, where there's actually more than one level of a buffer.
Yeah, I've seen, depending on where it is, if it's something that's just like people are driving by along the road, it might be a single row, but if it's a thing where, it's across the street from a residence or something, there's 2 or 3 rows potentially to fully block the view. So yeah, and that's something that we would evaluate through that process to see, where are the key pain points, where is this going to be potentially seen from, and where can we shield it with the appropriate plantings.
Because on the page 10, which has a beautiful picture of, I'm assuming this is one that you did, right?
This is, yes.
Where is this?
This project is in Rhode Island, actually.
I'm sorry, where?
Rhode Island.
And, it looks like the buffer zone is absolutely incredible, right? But I'm assuming way in the back on the left is maybe some population, but otherwise, it's in a place that's not terribly populated.
Yeah, and so that was, to James's point earlier, we tried to cite on a mix of land uses, right? So there are going to be pieces of this project that are going to look like this. They're going to be tucked in among forests. They're going to be tucked in among scrubland. It's going to be very difficult to see. But any large project like this is a balancing act of impacts, right? So we have to try to balance the impact of cutting trees with the impact of building over agricultural land and the impacts of siting. So there are definitely going to be pieces of this project that look like this. They're going to be sort of set back in among trees and completely shielded from the eye. And then there are going to be some portions of this project that we'll need to add extra plantings to help shield it. So it's going to be a mix.
Yeah, because a big concern in this town are the rural residents, who built their house out there, and they really don't want to have to get up in the morning and look both ways, and all they see is solar panels. But then again, most of the people, I think, are farmers who are leasing their land to you. They have the right to do that. But I completely understand how rural residents would be quite upset about it.
Yeah.
Unless there's buffer zones and good-looking, setback, and then really good-looking trees, and, yeah.
Absolutely, and there's a lot that we can do to sort of ease that pain, right? I mean, there are going to be portions of this that aren't going to be invisible, right? But there's trees that we can plant, there's specific outreach that we can do with, if there are neighbors that have a particularly bad view, there's, we can discuss with them additional setbacks, where's the view that they care about the most.
You would actually discuss with individuals?
We've done that in the past, yeah. We've sat down with folks at their kitchen table and said, hey, we're developing this project, it's near you, what trees can we plant, where is your point of concern? And we've in those conversations, we've built landscaping berms, we've, boosted, specific areas of tree plantings and things like that. So, and that's actually something, as James was referencing, in this public engagement plan process, one of the things we want to work with the town is how do we best engage with the public so we can hear those inputs, hear the folks that do have those concerns. Because it's a big area, and not everybody's going to have concerns, and not everybody who necessarily is going to be on our list that we think would have concerns is going to be covered, the folks that may have concerns. So that's part of our work with the towns, both, is to identify that plan and to effectively engage.
That sounds good. Do you have any more questions up here?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that item 17D is adoption of a scenic resource inventory. And I would like it if you could get in touch with CJ in our planning office and take a look at that document to see if any of those scenic resources are affected by your project and if there's things that you can do to, minimize that effect.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're in touch with CJ on a fairly regular basis. One of the other things that she mentioned to us, that's a good point that we'll need to raise with her, but one of the other things that she mentioned to us was the town is working on a recreation plan, or a comprehensive recreation trail plan. And one of the points she raised to us was, we could potentially, depending on the land that we have under control, contribute to that trail system, which, if we'd be happy to do. There's setbacks built in, there's areas around the arrays that have to naturally be there. We'd be happy to work with the town to identify some trail mixing that we could do, so.
Thank you.
At this point, if there's anybody from the public who wanted to ask questions, you could do so now. Just raise your hand and okay? Just tell us who you are.
My name is Don Berg. I live on Buck Road. I'd like to know, where did your labor pool come from?
So there is, right now, as I'm sure everybody has heard about, there's a bit of a labor shortage. And so when building a project like this, we're heavily incentivized by the state to hire as much local labor as possible. But there are specialized skills that, when it comes time to build the project, we may not be able to source locally. And so that, when that happens, we may be hiring from out of county, or we may be hiring from out of state. But we do have pretty heavy incentives through this NYSERDA RFP process to cite as much labor and as much contracting work locally as possible.
Okay. Also, I'd just like to know this buffering. How will this be in the contract, where you will be very explicit about what is going to go around each resident, and it's okay by let's say, the landowner?
So in terms of the buffering that we might do for each individual neighbor, that would be, a one-on-one discussion, and we would then incorporate that into the plans that we would submit for our state permit. And that state permit, the site plan that is approved would be basically the contract holding us to putting the trees where we said we would put them.
So you will be advertising for the labor pool?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to be strapped. We're going to need as much help as we can get. So we're going to be potentially, we actually, a couple weeks ago, had a chat with some folks at Cornell about trying to set up an internship opportunity through them. We've, historically done, local, either high school or college student internship opportunities with our management force. And then we'll also be reaching out to, either local temp labor services or local union halls, potentially, depending on the project, to source labor locally. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Yes?
I have a question about the
Could you
lifespan.
Could you just tell us who you are, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm Robin Burke. I also
Yeah.
live on Buck Road. I'm a lifelong Lansing resident. I've always lived in rural areas of Lansing, and I support solar energy, but this is a little overwhelming. So one of the questions I have, and no one has been able to answer this for me, what happens when, 20, 30 years down the road, what happens with these solar panels, and what happens with the batteries? Because I've heard the batteries are not recyclable.
So let me answer a couple points in order there. So first of all, our project will not have batteries sited on it. This is a solar only, no batteries paired. Secondly, batteries are recyclable. There's actually a plant in Binghamton that recently opened up to recycle batteries. And so they've been looking forward to this new battery industry that's going to be sparking up in the state, and they've just ramped up their process. Thirdly, with regard to the solar panels, the panel recycling industry in the United States hasn't had any reason to start yet, because there aren't enough panels that have gone past their 25, 30-year lifespan to need to be recycled. But what we're seeing in Europe is that these panels have valuable materials inside them, and that recycling industry naturally pops up as these panels start to get older. And so we're fairly expecting that, at the time that these projects do need to be decommissioned, 25, 30, 35 years down the line, they'll be going to those types of recycling plants. So that's the kind of thing that it may be a bit of a hand-wavy answer, because obviously it's 30 years down the line and it's hard to predict anything, but that's what we expect, is that industry will pop up in the same way that we've seen it happen across the pond, and that'll start to be where these projects send their panels.
Yes, go ahead.
Me?
Yep.
So my name is Susan Stickle. I live on Buck Road. I feel like my property is ground zero. So I'm going to want to sit down at my kitchen table, put that on the record, please, and have a good buffer. And secondly, I'm very concerned about my property value. I feel like my property is not going to be marketable. And that is a huge concern for me. I put a lot of money into my house, and I'm very concerned.
Yeah, so to speak to that a little bit, New York State, the solar market is still pretty young, so there hasn't been a lot of New York-specific studies on property value impacts from solar. But we've looked at a lot of studies that have come from other states, and the general impact across multiple studies tends to be either neutral or actually a slight uptick in property value.
No.
I didn't write the study.
No.
There was a study that doesn't.
Okay. Wait until it's your turn, please.
That's what I've seen. Maybe there are other studies that say otherwise, but that's what I've seen, is that it's a fairly across the board neutral impact.
Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Tell us who you are. Come on.
Hi, I'm Mike Sigler. I live at 218 Perugal Road. My first question, if you don't mind, I need to kind of ask the town board a question.
Well, is that
it's-
going to be during your report?
You don't have to actually answer it. It's just-
Oh, okay.
It's just, when I looked at the agenda last night at 11 o'clock PM before I went to bed, public comment was before you guys were going to vote. And now it's after. That just seems odd to me.
Well, I didn't
That's just
change
not
it.
generally how things are.
But what we thought, I didn't change it, but I like that the people who maybe came for the privilege of the floor, instead of waiting, and they will be finished with their presentation, they can ask directly. Because privilege of the floor, we don't tend to make comments after people talk for their 3 minutes. So this is a much better way to do it.
I don't disregard that, but people also might have something to say, and
They can still do privilege of the floor, Mike.
But it'll be after the vote. Where it doesn't
It'll
sound
be
like
after
maybe
the,
you're
what
gonna-
vote? What vote?
There's a vote the next time.
On the agenda is the vote to approve or not.
Oh, but I think we're going to table that. I think we're tabling that.
But, okay, but in the future though, that's peculiar, like I wouldn't,
Okay.
I'm just saying, that's, I wouldn't.
I did not make the agenda, but
I
that's
understand,
okay.
But I wouldn't do that. Anyway, my question to you guys is,
Okay.
when you guys have built this out, are you the builder, or are you gonna own this afterwards and sell the power wholesale?
So we are the developer, the builder, and the operations and maintenance contractor. There will be, at some point during construction, there will be a construction finance firm that comes in and takes over the sort of like financial obligations of the system. So they'll be the ones making the tax payments, they'll be the ones making the lease payments. But our business model is to develop, build, and maintain.
So they'll be the ones that own it?
Yes, they will.
So they'll collect whatever is paid, so about, I mean, I did the calculations, between 16 and 18 million dollars a year. That sounds about right.
I don't have the number off the top of my
I
head.
know, but, okay, so that's, what's the total investment on this?
So this project would be in the ballpark of a $200 million investment. And that's, the bulk of that is in the construction cost.
Right. Okay, and will all these panels track?
Yes.
It's like a lot of panels.
Yeah, so over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of advancements in the single axis tracking technology. It's become a lot cheaper. And so they don't track both directions, they only move east to west throughout the day, but each and every panel throughout the site, in tables of, 20 to 30 to 40, or however long the row is, will move, they'll face east in the morning and west in the afternoon.
Well, my last question is, so I don't want to weigh this all on you. I mean, it's just that Next Area is going to build one right next to you. So they're going to be your neighbor. So I'm wondering, have you talked to that neighbor at all? Because even the interconnection point is like literally, well, it's at her house. So is theirs.
Yeah, so we've done work with NextEra in the past. We haven't specifically talked with them about their development plans here. They haven't reached out to us about their development plans here. I don't know what land they have under control or what their plans are. We do know they're tapping the line next to ours, and so there's going to be, some cooperation potentially with NICEAG that we'll need to do and them, but no, we're not, coordinated.
One more slide.
Okay,
So you're
almost
tapping-
done, Mike?
I know, just one more.
Okay.
So you're tapping, so there were two lines that run there, so two 115s. And you're going to tap the one. Once you've tapped it, is that all the room that's on that line?
Yes and no. So we are going to, based on our initial analysis, and like James said, we haven't gotten that system impact study back yet. Based on our initial analysis, we think, the project that we're putting on that line will be most of what it can currently hold. That said, it's very common for projects of this size to also pay for upgrades to those lines. And so there may be, additional capacity after the project is built.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. You want to just finish up, because we'll that's Sarah, right?
Sarah.
Yes, please stand up and say who you are.
Sure. I'm Sarah Younger, I live at 218 Pruitt. Can you elaborate a little bit more on maintenance?
Yeah, so maintenance kind of comes in two main categories. There's vegetation maintenance and electrical maintenance. So for the electrical maintenance, it will be fairly low effort, a lot of remote monitoring. There will be, techs that might come out to the site to do checkups. They might, replace small equipment, stuff like that. The bulk of the maintenance is on the vegetation maintenance side. The grass below the panels needs to be kept below the panels, right? And so that is, because otherwise it gets up, it shades the panels, and it affects production. So traditionally that's done just with, mechanical mowing. And one of the things that we're looking into, and I think a lot of people in New York State are potentially excited about, is sheep grazing maintenance. It's something that we're interested in. We've seen it work on much smaller projects. We haven't seen it effective on a large-scale project yet, but we're sort of working with groups that work on that and are hopeful that we can make that work as well.
So is that labor part local, or is that part of your?
Yeah, we would put out a request for proposals locally, and that's definitely part of what we're incentivized to do locally. Any dollars that the project spends, the project receives basically a better weighting by the state if those dollars are spent locally.
Last question. Because you're saying most of it is remotely monitored, so that says to me that there's not going to be somebody on site?
Not 24/7, but there's, going to be local emergency responders that can be at the site, and there will be.
That's the second half of my question, is our local volunteer fire department, with all the equipment that they have or don't have, equipped and ready and capable?
Yeah.
Handle, control, or otherwise?
Great, yeah, great question. So there's the training part, and then there's the equipment part. So on the training side, we always, during the construction phase, do one or multiple trainings with the local fire department or fire departments to advise them on, where the safe cutoff points are, where the site entrance points are, what's live during the day, what's live at night, all those types of factors, all the electrical safety factors. We're not the experts on the sort of like how they firefight it, but, we have people that we work with that, kind of know more about that. I'm not the expert. But on the equipment side of it, we will also be paying, additional special district taxes to whatever the fire district is. If there's special equipment that they need over and above that, that's something that, like I mentioned, we can consider in a host community agreement.
Mr. Burke, did you have another question?
Yes, I do. I still don't feel convinced about these buffer zones that we are going to be, I don't know, I mean, I feel like it was talked about and then it's gone, and they'll do whatever they want.
Well, they said they
How
would,
are we going to,
but he did say they will meet with individual landowners, residents.
is that in writing?
Excuse me?
Is that going to be in writing?
I can give you my business card at the end of this meeting, and
How are
we can chat.
I'm not talking about just me.
No,
No.
and it's understandable. So we will have, there will be, like James said, we'll have the website that will be publicly available. We'll be doing outreach, with the guidance of the town board to the people that we think, may be may have interest or may be affected by the project. And then in terms of the buffer zones, we are tied to whatever is in our permit. That's our contract with the state that gives us the authority to build the project. And if we don't put in the buffer zones that are in that application, they can pull our permit, they can completely invalidate the project. So that, I recognize it may sound hand-wavy, but that's, we are tied by the state to what we say we will do.
It seems like a blind trust. It seems like the town should have some handle on that.
And the town will be involved in that ORES process. There's a town engagement process in which, the town can comment on and write in suggestions that's all built into the ORES process. I think, and what I've been talking about is prior to that ORES process, we want to engage with the town and with the community to identify where these items might come up before submitting that application.
The only problem I see with that would be the enforcement of it after the fact. So, we gotta look into that too, I would think.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, a lot of that comes along with the host community agreement. That's sort of the biggest, contractual element that we can have with towns is the host community agreement. So that's where we would commit to X, Y, Z, and under those commitments, the town has leverage, in return, because a lot of the times our pilot agreement may be contingent upon the host community agreement being valid, right? So that's sort of the contracting element where we can put some of those things in writing, where we would say, this area is an area of concern, you need to plant these types of trees at this depth for this distance, and we can have that in the host community agreement.
And I think this particular town, the members right here on the town board are very aware the impact on the residents. We really are. And so we'll make sure that it's put in, because in the contract we have.
Thank you.
Because it is I agree, it's a huge concern. I mean,
It is.
I happen to live on a dairy farm, an organic dairy farm. We're not going to rent, we've been approached, and we're not going to rent our land. But I can imagine just not being on a farm, but having your acreage or your residence and being surrounded by solar panels. I mean, we've got to do it right. I mean, it's going to happen,
Yes.
yes, but I think we have to do it right.
But it should be done right.
CJ, were you going to say something?
Yeah, can I just ask you a couple of quick questions? Could you speak a little bit about your intentions for building permitting on the project? I know we've spoken about that before. And then I think I heard something from the town board about consideration, if not tonight, then possibly in August. Would you be willing to share the community engagement plan and the public release that you'd have to submit to NYSERDA to be considered?
So, yeah, so let me speak on the first point first. So we did, was that a month or two ago, a point of discussion that came up was regarding building permitting, because, obviously the ORES permitting process steps over a lot of the procedural parts of the permitting process at the local level. Our discussion was that, I think we feel very open to having the town, code enforcement be the agency that handles the building permit and the electrical permit. I think the key piece that we discussed was that I think the fees that are built in at the town level right now are, I think, designed for a smaller system. And so they ramp up at a megawatt level that I think gets to be a pretty high fee. And so, we'd want to just discuss that, but other than that, we have no issue with the town sort of being the authority that handles that. Regarding the second question, in terms of the public engagement plan, so we have drafts of that right now. It's certainly not really, hasn't been typo checked. But that would be something that, we could share a draft of or share a version of that. I don't know that we'll have that ready in advance of the next town board meeting, though, because we will be, just thinking forward, we're only, 4 or 5 weeks away from the bid. We may be kind of up against the timeline. So that may be something, if that's contingent, if the letter is contingent upon that, we may have to potentially delay that up till after submission. But we can, work on that and aim for that.
I'd like the people in the audience to answer questions if you wish, and then we'll go back to the board. Is there somebody else who wants to speak?
Well, my name's Cindy David. I'm going to do privilege of the floor because I don't believe they're the company that's going to be in my backyard.
You don't, excuse me?
I'm going to still do privilege of the floor because I don't believe their company.
Oh, it's another company. Okay, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Anybody else? Okay, Ron.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that you're really willing to work with individual landowners and literally sit down with them and see what needs to be done. And I'm hearing concern about how that'll be enforced. And I think I'm also hearing underneath that, like, what's the timeline for that? So people don't go, well, wait, I wanted to talk to you, it's already done. How can people be sure that they get talking to you where any agreement with you can be put as part of the contract, not just...
Yeah, absolutely. So high level on timing.
Yeah.
I would expect, later this year, early next year, we could start having some of those discussions. Again, it's kind of contingent upon having the initial results of our environmental surveys back, having the land control 100%, so that we're not guessing at where the panels are going to be or where we want to put the panels. To the second point of how can they be sure, the ORES process, they don't have a lot in there about community engagement. One thing that they do specifically require is a notice, at least a certain amount of time prior to the ORES process, an application submission that would, go out to people within a certain radius of potential panel locations. And so I think we can kind of comfortably agree to go over and above that and to do outreach, but in terms of landowners' confidence, that's enforced by the state.
They'll get that notification in enough time to then get in touch with you and say, I want to be sure about buffering it from...
Yeah, I think it's a 2-month window it's on paper. Don't quote me on that. I think it's 2 months.
Thank you.
May I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. So I've seen a lot of different maps. They're very confusing. This map that you've included really seems kind of meaningless to me, and I live on Buck and Van Oostrum. There's a lot of wooded areas, natural wooded areas that I've seen in the map. Are they going to be cleared for solar panels, or will they be left?
So in the vicinity of Buck and Van Oostrum, we're not planning any tree clearing. There will, in some of the areas in Groton, like I mentioned, there is a mix of forested land that we're planning to use. In those areas, we will be cutting trees. But the hope is that it'll end up looking something like what's shown here on page 10, where it's sort of set back in among those trees. But no, to speak specifically on the area of Van Oostrum Road, we're not planning any clear cutting.
Doug, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, I thought you had another one.
I didn't think of one.
That's okay, that's okay.
There have been a lot asked.
We've been going for quite a while. And this has been very, very good and very helpful. I want to thank you. And I'm so happy you're so willing to answer question after question, yes. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd just like to
Okay.
say one more thing.
One more.
What if we meet and I don't like your buffer zone, I like something else? What, we have no way of disagreeing with you.
So, I mean, there is a public engagement process of the state-run permitting process. So while the town has sort of like a seat at the table where they have a specific place where they can comment, the public can also like comment into that process, and if you have specific concerns, you can raise them at that point. Obviously, our hope is that, we would come to a reasonable agreement and could compromise and find middle ground. But yeah, if we can't find that middle ground and you continue to disagree, there's a public involvement portion of the ORS process where you can publicly, submit your comments, state your impact and so forth.
All right, thank you.
Again, I want to thank you. I have learned a lot, and I hope the people in the audience have also learned a lot. And we'll proceed.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So item 7, motion to authorize the town supervisor to execute letter of support for this project. Do we have to formally table it, or just not take it up?
No, just table.
Okay.
Still have to
Table,
consider it.
okay, which means we're not going to take it up at this meeting. The next one, which is item 8, privilege of the floor, and we do time this, so each person is allowed 3 minutes, and we do not have a back and forth like we just did. And there are 7 people signed up, and the first one is Cindy Day.
I'm still talking because it's another company.
Yes, I understand this, I understand.
My name is Cindy Day, also on another part of Buck Road in the town of Lansing. Last fall, we observed survey markers on the property adjoining ours. We did some research and found it was one of the proposed agricultural properties to have the installed solar panels. I understand the agricultural landowner's decision on this issue of having profitable income from their land. However, the land will no longer be producing any food source for decades. The issue, however, is the proposed product they have a concern with. 1, the effect of the value of our property. 2, the environmental issues. 3, the maintenance of the interior and exterior of the project. 4, the negative appearance for those who live and travel through Lansing. 5, the visual impact on the residents who have to look at it daily. 6, what landscaping will be placed around the exterior perimeter besides piles of dirt they call berms that grow weeds. 7, the distance the project will be placed away from the residents. 8, what happens to this project when it becomes obsolete. 9, the environmental effect of discarding the project. 10, are these industrial solar panels going to be a long-term effect on our community? 11, does the residents or the town of Lansing benefit from this proposed industrial solar project? So if the internet is true, I went online and found an article on the Providence Journal published 10/1/2020 that a Corey Lang Associate Professor of National Resource Economics found that after analyzing thousands of property sales in Rhode Island and Massachusetts near the, and I don't know how to say this, photovoltaic panels, they'll know the answer, over the 10 years there was a negative impact on the home values nearest the solar projects. The prices declined by larger percentages of homes closest to the solar installations. So I asked this board, what is the impact in New York State, town of Lansing, on my property value if these are installed bordering my property?
Okay. Thank you very much, and very well said, thank you. The next person is Sarah, did you want to speak?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Younger. I live at 218 Pruville Road. I'm here tonight to express my concern regarding multiple industrial-scale solar projects that are slated to happen in our part of Tompkins County. I grew up in Groton and have returned to Lansing to raise my children. I am aware of the hardships that small farm families have faced over the years. These industrial solar projects are moving along behind the scenes here and have been for several years. Only recently have people put together the surveyors marking the cornfields around them and the scale of this. Minimal and mostly online-only opportunities have been presented at the state level during 2020 for the general public to learn more or give input. The ORES publication of regulations is lacking when it comes to the neighbors surrounding the projects. It is very unclear if the state will even compromise and work with the rules that towns previously have in place, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have them. Our town worked hard to write small-scale solar regulations with things such as setbacks, vegetative screening, and pollinators, things that make sense in a rural agricultural setting that is about to be designated as a national heritage site. These will be insufficient. Further details on reasonable setbacks and vegetative plantings should be added if for no other reason than to protect the home values of these other tax-paying residents. There is so much that we don't know, as it is so new to cover this much farmland with solar panels in a beautiful area like upstate New York. Many people raise questions on their efficiency, the effects on wildlife, the clear cutting of trees. Some have health-related concerns. Others question the sourcing of the materials, the maintenance and dismantling of the panels at the end of their unknown life expectancy. All are valid questions, and most can admit that this is new information for us all to process. We could wait and see how it looks. Venice Center and Conquest are up first. But time is money, and the opportunity for these corporations is now. Decisions that bring this drastic of a change are difficult and have far-reaching ripple effects in our entire community. These corporations have their representation at our table, and I would ask that the town board and the planning board consider carefully all sides of this and find a way to represent all of the people in their community. There is a need for more transparency and to have a comprehensive plan in place for the future of all Lansing residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mike. Goodness, Mike, how many times are you going to talk tonight?
Right? I know.
Because you're going to give us, you're going to give us your report, too.
Well, and now I have to follow Sarah, which is not going to be good.
That's going to be hard.
It's a hard act to follow. So I have a lot of other things to say, but first I want to come in and say, listen, I was never coming in here to ask you, to vote against this project. I found it hard to fathom that you would vote for a project that we knew so little about. And I think that's true of anything. The information just simply isn't out there. And I keep being told, but it will be. Well, this project actually is further along. And I'm talking about next year, too. They're both further along than we think, right? I mean, the land is already mostly secured. Now we're going for the funding. The funding will be in place if it gets approved by the end of the year. Well, guess what? That's kind of the ballgame right there. I mean, if we get the funding for the Myers Park, which is later on the agenda, hey, we've got the plan, we've had the meetings, we have the funding, kind of like the next step is build. And I get it, they're going to have to go through a lot of regulations with the state, but I'm here to ask the town board, listen, people are concerned. I mean, there are people here that are going to talk, and, this is all brand new to them. And all of these concerns, we have come a long way in a year. When this was voted on a year ago, I couldn't believe it when I was watching on TV. And now, this was a valuable discussion tonight. A lot of questions were asked, a lot of questions were answered. CS Power answered all these questions and is now committed to certain things that, frankly, they weren't committed to just 30 minutes ago, because they've said, this is what we're going to do. Well, I'm going to take them on their word that this is what they're going to do. I would like some regulations at the town level that actually kind of force the issue, and we can poo-poo that, we can say, oh, no, the state is just going to override us anyway. Well, the state said, no, we're not going to do that. CS Power just said, no, we wouldn't do that, we're not going to override what the town does. So if everybody's saying that, well, then it's kind of the move by the town and the planning board to say, okay, here's what we're thinking. Listen, I personally don't think it's wise to cover up a lot of farmland with solar panels. I get that the state is going to come in and do what it wants to do. I frankly think it's kind of a waste of a natural resource. But again, the state is going in this direction. They're not making any more farmland that's arable. Everything that's, I think, can be planted in this area of the country is planted. The corn is coming up now. That's going to be sent to a local dairy just 2 miles away. Now that dairy is going to have to get corn from further away. And where's that land going to come from? Because these are going up all over the place. And I don't want CS Power to feel like I'm picking on them, because it isn't just them. It's next door is, like I said, literally next door. So while 1,000 acres sounds like a lot, well, it's more. I mean, it's a lot more acreage than just that one plan. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Next is Robin. Did you want to say some more?
I don't have a lovely typewritten presentation. And what the previous people have said is exactly what my friends and my neighbors and my families are feeling. We love where we live. We love the beautiful countryside, the woods, the cornfields, everything. We don't even mind the manure smell, which we frequently have. And I like what you said, Ms. Benson, about it is going to happen. We need to make sure it's done right. So I would just like to request that the town involve the public more, because we honestly knew nothing about this until Mike Sigler came knocking at our door several months ago, during the pandemic, I believe. And, and then we just started disseminating the information to our neighbors, and I just don't feel that people know what's going on, and I really think that's important, to have some kind of an informational meeting, like, with these two gentlemen. Could we get the other companies involved to come in, have a question and answer? I mean, it would make people feel a lot better. If it's going to happen, let's make it happen correctly and not wish we had done it differently when it's all over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next one is Tom. Do you want to say something else?
Yes, just one more thing.
That's okay.
I completely disagree with the possible value of your land going up or staying the same. I mean, that just is a no-brainer to me, because if I was driving on that road, that would be completely out for me to buy a place there. It's ugly. Now, all I'm saying is I think maybe the town should think about lowering taxes. Maybe if you're in this development, it's a possibility. That's all I'm saying. Maybe a committee should be formed. I don't know. That's all. Thank you.
Ruth is next, Hopkins, but after her is Phil Munson. Did you want to come up and speak, Phil? Because I think yours is about the solar project.
I'm different, so Phil.
Yeah, and I happen to know yours is different.
Doesn't matter to me, Andrea.
Okay, come on up,
Okay.
if you wish.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I like the idea of solar power, but I'm not convinced yet that this is right for us. They're talking about 1,000 acres, and that's an awful lot of panels. And if those are panels from China, I'm petrified of them due to the integrity, the contamination of the integrity, hazardous, toxic waste. I'm also concerned about the word pilot. I'm assuming that stands for payment in lieu of taxes, and with the millions and millions of dollars that are going to be generated for landowners, I can't fathom such a thing. The town has properly just passed a motion tonight to exceed a statutory bar, and I wouldn't quibble and squabble about it because we're well served. But to pass that bar and talk about forgiving taxes to people that are going to enter in a project that'll literally make millions just doesn't make sense. It's very unfair. The last concern I have is the decommissioning. Should we find there are long-term problems with some of the rare earth minerals or contaminants, if in fact we have Chinese panels, the decommissioning bond is going to be a travesty. We've come through 2 months of 5% inflation each month. You multiply that 5% times 12 months times 25 years, if it should be something that bad, and it's simply scary. We need to secure the community's future. The idea that potentially this could go south, the 1,000 acres could be the biggest love canal anybody ever had a nightmare about. And I don't want to see that in this community. Our kids and our grandchildren deserve a lot better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all those who signed up, everyone has spoken.
Except me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bruce. I pushed you back and then I forgot all about it. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you.
You have to introduce yourself, because I just called you Ruth.
Oh, well, I do have a last name.
Excuse me, Debbie, I just wondered if she had a copy from you.
I wrote this one,
Oh, okay.
but I can't remember without my crib sheet. Okay, I'm Ruth, can you hear me? Okay, Ruth Hopkins, and I live in Lansing on Asbury Road. I'm here tonight because I understand you're voting tonight to reduce the recreation loop for the Village Solar's development, and I've been asked to share my perspectives about this request. Perspectives I believe focus on the health and the future of those who live in our community. It's about 1,000 people over there, probably 10% of our community now. I do not live adjacent to this development, and I don't live very near, so I'm not vested in that way. This is the third time I've spoken or written to either the planning board or the town board about the enforcement of the amenities associated with the Village Solar's PDA. Hopefully it's the last. So a bit of history. In 2009-2010, the engineer for the Village Solars visited the Lansing Pathways Committee, of which I was a member, 2 or 3 times to get our help planning the recreation for this development, presumably to get our support as well. And we happily talked with him about where those paths should go, and we're happy that they were a perimeter trail and internal trails as well. In 2011 and 12, I became an elected town board council member and participated in the vote to approve the Village Solar's PDA, and those included amenities. These amenities are part of the objectives of PDAs, and it's why we invented or included that in our land use ordinances. And it's outlined pretty carefully in that document. I'm submitting a copy of section 706.2 as a reference, just to give you an idea of the extra kinds of amenities we look for in PDAs when we increase the density, which is usually the case, of these areas. Let's see here. I'm also sharing a booklet and some copies of the pages of that booklet that was provided to us at the time we approved this development. And the booklet has very nice illustrations of some of these amenities, as was listed in my letter to the town board earlier this year, which I'm also including. In 2018-19, I became aware that the temporary bus stop had not been built. Okay, well, I will stop. The rest of my statement is here, and I am urging you to take more time to review this matter and the documents I'm submitting before you vote on item number 18. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's it. Yeah, yeah, so we have to conclude this, this part of the privilege of the floor, and I want to thank everybody who spoke, and of course, we all listened. But we have to go on with the meeting. And I don't know if any of the board members want to say anything or not.
I just want to mention that I agree with Mike, that I find it problematic when we have items on the agenda, voting items, before the public gets a chance to speak. I think in the future, I'd really like it that public comment be before any voting items, so the public has a chance to talk to us about an item on the agenda before the vote.
Okay. Excuse me?
We did that.
Yes, we're not going to do it, but thank you.
No, we did that. You don't have the public to speak before.
Yeah.
And then table.
And then we tabled. Okay, yes, we did. Okay, so the rest of the agenda, we have different reports. Agenda number 9, it's the Lansing Community Library Report submitted by Christine Eisenhut, which is written out. Does anybody have any comments? Well, yes, I'm on that. I just know they're working very hard to get back to normal, whatever normal is, and I think the library's done an excellent job, and I commend them. The next report is the Lansing Youth Services, which is another committee I'm on, and they're working really hard to try and get back to more normal programs for the youth of Lansing, and they have a very, very good summer schedule that's going to be presented for the kids. Okay, Mike Ziegler's up again.
Keep it to.
Are you running for office or something?
I know. Always run for office. Well, thanks for having me again. The good news is the legislature did meet for the first time again in person, so we're excited about that. That happened at our first meeting in July. We've done this kind of hybrid thing where it's online and in person. Obviously, we have to be in person so we can vote and things like that, but if people want to attend, they can come in through Zoom and they can do public, they can talk, they can listen to the meeting, they can do public speaking of the floor and all that. So that is exciting for us. Let's see, Heather McDaniel, President of the Ithaca Area Economic Development, she did join our first meeting of the month, and she presented the recently developed economic recovery strategy. She highlighted economic impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. The strategy is organized into 3 phases of recovery. That's response, stabilization, and redevelopment and revitalization. So why is this important? So we have this almost $20 million at the county. You will maybe read that we've decided to put all this money into the county. That's true and not true. So what we're going to do is, I keep using the word launder. My fellow legislators don't like that actual term, but it's basically what you're doing. You're taking money from the feds. We're going to then apply it to things within the county that we will then pay off. And then that money is now free to spend on other things. And that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to spend county money on these other things. Because let's face it, now that's where the real debate is going to happen. And that's going to start really August 10th. So things, I did my vision statement. I sent it to you. I pulled a lot from you. Thank you for giving me your ideas. Andrew, no, we're not building water slides. I'm sorry. I appreciate that that's what you wanted, but No, but certain things are on everybody's mind too, like mental health. I mean, obviously, that is a large issue for us. Drug treatment. I mean, we're hearing every day that opioid overdoses throughout the country, where it's just gotten out of hand. I mean, not that it wasn't always out of hand, but now you've got this exploded problem. So all of these kind of issues. The reason I voted, though, to dump the money in the county and to kind of free it up from these state or the federal requirements on reporting it, is we can almost give it like as a block grant. You just live in a county that has a lot of agencies, and we're all capable of doing this. If you live in another county that didn't have that kind of substructure, maybe you'd want to do it a different way, but we do have that. So it's kind of like, great, economic development, Heather McDaniel, what do you need? Okay, well, we can fund that through that agency, and that's how I foresee this going forward. I put in the budget statement, you guys want to do a lot of issues with your parks. I think that's on the agenda, some of these outdoor things. I'd like to see a tree planted for every person in the county. I don't think that's going to happen, but people like that idea, so we'll see. Well, the ones that block solar panels, how about that? In other news, our interim county administrator, Lisa Holmes, she did share the progress on the reimagining public safety plans. You're going to see a lot about this. It's actually in Tompkins Weekly this week, so I believe that'll be in pretty much every paper that comes out, except for next week's, where I expect to see Mr. Dake on the cover with the gold medal, so that'll be great too. COVID-19 updates, we're down to very few cases. We're down into like the single digits. We are worried, obviously, about Delta variant, and we are keeping an eye on that. But the nice thing about the county is 68.3% of Tompkins' population has received at least the first dose. So we're right there. Cornell just released that they're 90% vaccinated. But obviously, our public health director, Frank Krupa, and the administrators are on top of this. So the only real cases we're seeing now are travel-related, and then it's households within that person who traveled. So that's where we are. I already covered the expanded budget and what we're kind of doing with those funds and the money. And we also adopted the Tompkins, so just a couple more things. Tompkins Cortland Community College, we did pass their budget, which is nice. Our commitment from Tompkins County is just over $3 million, represents a 1.6% decrease over last year because enrollment has also declined slightly within the county. Big news that all the college, well, two of the colleges, TC3 and Ithaca College, getting new leadership. You may have read that. So we obviously are looking forward to seeing who they appoint to those new positions, and we'll work with them just as well as we did the last people, and we did work with them well. So, County Attorney Jonathan Wood, who, by the way, is also retiring this year. We're going to be looking for a new county attorney. He did update the legislature that the county is set to receive a portion of the settlement that's being reached with the states. So this is the opioid money. You're going to read a lot about this in the coming days. Something like $23 billion, incredible amount of money. So I did ask, it's interesting, even if you did not participate in it from the jump, like we did at the county, we sued right from the jump, you could still get in on this money. I brought that up saying, well, can the town of Lansing, can the village of Lansing, can anybody, any municipality can. The dilemma there, not really a dilemma, is what's the damage, right? For the county, the damage was significant because we had to pay for all this treatment. Lansing, I don't think, paid for really any treatment. However, I don't know, there's always damage, right? There's damage from opioid abuse. What does that mean? Well, I don't know what that means. So it's something I think that we maybe should get together with the towns and kind of determine. Trumansburg would have an excellent argument because they have an ambulance service. Maybe our fire service had to respond to calls too. So I think there are avenues to kind of free up more of that money. And I say this because the more municipalities that participate, the more money is freed up. And I looked the same way you just did. It's counterintuitive. But Jonathan Wood said that's exactly what it is. And I don't really know how that works yet, but he was very clear about that. The more municipalities that participate, the more money there is. So that's where we are with that. I will keep you in the loop on that when I find something out. And that's it.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. can give your seat up to somebody else.
All right. I don't know if you have any questions.
We don't want to be here till 11. We don't.
11's early.
Patrick, you're next.
In an effort to save time, I will take any questions you may have about it.
And we just read everything, your report here. That's true.
One thing, there is harmful algae blooms again in Myers Park, also at Salt Point, so please stay out of the water. We have signs posted everywhere. The health department did shut us down from swimming, so until we have a 24-hour period where we are clear, then no one can swim.
How long ago did that start?
That started yesterday.
Okay, thank you.
Has it been sent in for testing for the bacteria levels?
The bloom is still there today, so they won't test until it actually looks like it has cleared out, and then they'll test that. If it's clear, then we can go back to swimming.
Okay, thanks.
How about boating? Are we restricting boating at all?
It does not restrict boating access at all.
Okay, thank you.
Here under parks, you said Ludlowville has been busier than normal. We have seen a huge increase in patrons there, sometimes causing parking issues.
Yes.
I noticed that, of course, since we have to go through Ludlowville almost every day to get, since I live on the other side of the
I
bridge.
think with COVID, a lot of people found parks within New York State.
I think that's true.
And ours is obviously kind of a hidden gem, and you have to park and actually walk to the falls to view it. You know, most people don't even know it's there. So in the plan, in one of the concept plans for our master plan is some expanded parking there.
That would be a good idea.
Hopefully, our legislator, Mike Sigler, can find us some money to maybe get some of those concept plans done.
I'd write it more. A big block on the map.
And I want to thank Joe for pushing the plaque of Peter Wheeler. As some of you might know, my family, my immediate family has many, many races, because my children have married people of different backgrounds, which is fantastic. And I was taking the other mother-in-law, Aziza's my daughter-in-law, her mother was here for 3 weeks, and she was very impressed. She was here from Chicago. And I said, well, I'll have to thank Joe, so I'm thanking you publicly, Joe.
Well, thank you. I smile every time I drive by it.
No, yes, yeah. And she had no idea who he was, and so, you know, we all get educated. So that was terrific.
Excellent.
Yeah. Highway report. It's not cricket.
Hold on, you gotta wake up.
I'm going to follow suit with Patrick on this one. There's a couple things I'd like to add. Today was a rough day for us on CW5, but we actually connected on down by Morocco. So it's been a rough go of it. Obviously, with the water traveling down Google Road and then coming into our line where we're running the water line. But finally today, we're connected on. Regards to Crooked Hill, Levelville Road, I've been in contact with T.G. Miller, Don D., myself, Jim Morris are working on funding, what it's going to cost, if we're going to do it, if it's even feasible. So still in a holding pattern there. But as soon as I know something else, I'll pass it along.
Okay, I had 2 questions for the highway department.
Sure.
One is, I noticed on Fiddler's Green, I happen to walk with 2 other ladies every single morning at 7 o'clock in that area. And we noticed that, you know, Town of Lansing equipment's coming down the road really early. And we were going, wow, this is good, but what are they going to do? And it ended up, you somehow cleaned up the side of the road where Fiddler's Green makes this incredible turn. In fact, that's the hill that we all puff on when we come back up. And I was wondering, how do you decide which things are going to be improved?
Well, that was Mother Nature pushing us to do that, honestly. After the heavy rains, just similar to Myers, the water cut a secondary ditch. So we came in and then actually sloped and graded the shoulder of the road to where it should get the water to the
That's what I surmised, and that's what I told my walking mates. But what was interesting is the people who own that piece of property were not told in advance that this was going to be done.
Well, we worked within our right of way, honestly.
I know, but I think it would have been nice to tell them.
Okay.
Because that lady, we met walking her dog, and she was saying, whoa, what's happening here? And she, they own that.
Yeah, no, I know. They've had us brush everything down there, put in a secondary driveway for
Right.
them. I've had many conversations with them.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, just FYI, for your information. And then the other thing for your information is one of my friends, it's Julie Behrens, she also walks around Myers Park. And she came out of Myers Park, and unfortunately, she fell, and it was on a piece of rebar that was about this tall, that had been used to mark the Rendiski house, which I think is up for sale. And she ended up going to the hospital in the ambulance because it tore her leg on her shin bone and she needed stitches and she was bleeding profusely. So she just wanted me to mention this in public, that why was it so short?
I don't know where this house is.
It's right there on the railroad tracks. Because I'd say you're coming down into Myers Park.
Oh,
I mean, we didn't do it. I mean, I told you the town has no responsibility, it's private property.
It's whoever surveyed it.
Excuse me?
It's whoever surveyed the
But
property.
it was real, and I saw it afterwards, it was really dangerous. I mean, if it was this tall, fine, but it was this tall and the weeds, of course, hit it. And so she fell on it and it sliced her leg. So, I don't know what we can do about it, but, and I told her it had nothing to do with the Parks and Rec or the highway department.
I reach out to the homeowner and ask why that was done, I suppose.
The homeowners have died, I mean,
Well,
it's up,
the
right?
property's just been recently sold, so I'm assuming that's why the survey was done. And Guy, you can speak to this, I doubt there's anything we can do.
That's right, and I know the town's not liable or anything, I know.
No, but the property owner is.
Maybe, I mean, she was off on their little strip because she didn't want to walk on the road.
I'm actually, once the new owner takes full ownership, I don't know if it's actually been closed upon yet, but once that happens, I'm going to speak to them about widening the road like we did on the other side of the road, and hopefully, tear those bushes out and make that more of a shoulder there.
Yeah, it's right there, yeah, where you would want to widen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, I brought that up. Okay, thank you guys very much. CJ, you're up.
Hi, good to see you all. We'll start just by asking if the board has any questions about the report that I did submit. Otherwise, I'll just give you a quick catch-up.
No?
Okay. One of the acquisitions that we've been attempting is of the Lansing Residential Center. As you know, we've been working with New York State Office of General Services. One of the key pieces of that is, we think one of the last pieces would be attempting to get all the on-site wastewater treatment records to be able to actually separate the sites. Right now, they're joined essentially by that RBC wastewater treatment facility that's there on the boys' school site. So that's kind of one of the last hanging chads to that possible acquisition by the town. So hopefully we will get some news from the health department about those records. So continuing to track those down. Just to let you know, the town has assembled kind of an ad hoc working group of folks working on siting of electric vehicle charging stations. This is just kind of coming out of availability of grant cycles that are coming up. Joe actually is helping out with that as well. We've had some conversations with some turnkey servicers, as well as with NYSEG, because they do have a couple different programs. They have one called Make Ready that brings all the electric to the site, which is great, so they get them all hooked up. and then Charge Ready, which helps subsidize significantly, I think it's 90%, maybe 80% of the cost of the stations themselves. So we're looking at some providers who can essentially provide a solution for us to be able to just kind of jump on that. We're looking at coordinating with the fire department on the 2 sites, one on Ridge and one on Auburn Road. They're generally used as park and rides. We're thinking that could be a good location. Also, Myers Park has requested a couple stations, and to that end, we did have a conversation with NYSEG regarding the concern that some in the working group had expressed about some demand charges. Ends up that we can actually control that with the stations by kind of throttling them back, throttling the usage. So say somebody goes to Myers Park in the winter and plugs in an EV, we don't want to end up with a bill for hundreds of dollars for a single charge, right? We have been working on that with NYSEG and also with the provider so that we get good equipment that does what we want it to do. And so that's coming along, and we're having some site visits coming up. I'm hoping to coordinate those sometime in mid-August with all interested departments. And of course, Town Hall is a location right there, of course, by the bus stop. Also, just kicked off, as you recall, we executed the agreement with Cohen Law Group for the audit of the franchise agreement. That's estimated to take 3 to 6 months total. They're sending a list of 13 questions to Charter, which they will essentially have to answer, looking back somewhere between 3 and 5 years of auditing their gross revenues, as well as the homes passed list. So this is every subscriber in the town. Is it accurate? Then they'll be moving on to the actual franchise renewal agreement negotiations, and there was a lot to know. It's kind of unbelievable, so I'm really glad that we hired this group because it's staggering the complexity of these cable TV franchise agreements, so big shout out to Guy for that recommendation. You did mention some concern about notification and neighbors and roadways, and it did kind of lead me to just wanted to, number one, thank you for bringing on our new planner, John Zepko, who's taken over all development review now, which has, taken, a lot of work from me, and I'm really grateful for that. But he also comes with a strong GIS skill set, and I'd really like to think long-term about GIS strategic plan, not only for planning, but also for ongoing projects, neighbor notifications, ways to communicate with the public. So that's something that we're thinking about in the longer term. Hopefully, we'll probably end up applying for grants for something of that magnitude, but did want to let you know we're thinking about it and are very mindful of continuing to increase public engagement as much as possible. I know we kind of took a step backwards with the loss of the Lansing Star, so we're very mindful of trying to get word out to people about a variety of issues. So finally, also, it's grant season. As you know, they're new next Friday, the 30th, at close of business, and we have 3 going in this year, as we've planned since 2019, which are, of course, Highway's recommendation on the Salmon Creek Realignment project. That's a significant project to stabilize the roadbed and limit the amount of sediment that's going down Salmon Creek. We're hoping because of the nutrient transport and sediment, that maybe we can use this to attack some of the harmful algal blooms and maybe get a better handle on that. That combined with the significant upgrades at Myers Park, of course, which if you have any questions about, we're happy to address some of the upgrades that are listed in that plan. They're very similar to the 2019 upgrades, obviously with the big exception of the reconfiguration of circulation access and parking in the site, which hopefully represents Pat's vision for the future, but it also will help stabilize some of the stream bank there using natural restoration practices on the beach and really expand that beautiful view of the lake. And I can't say enough good things about that planning process. MJ and Place Alliance have been really excellent. And last but not least is the Highways Department request for a vacuum truck, very important for their operations, very expensive. So we're hoping to subsidize the 75% of that $430,000 cost through Water Quality Improvement Program grant going in next Friday. I'm hoping we hit 3 for 3. We'll see what happens. And we'll find out in mid-December about those awards from the consolidated funding application.
You've been busy.
Of course.
Any questions? Wait, for the hand first.
A couple really specific little questions. When you talk about the charging stations,
Yes.
you said Ridge Road. Where
Yes.
on Ridge Road are they thinking?
Yeah, so one of the first questions that we put out as part of the working group was, what are some possible sites in the town? The county came up with this really nice site suitability, charging station suitability tool, which is great. But we got in touch with the fire district, actually, and asked the commissioners, hey, where is it that you'd like these cited? And so it's the address of their fire station.
One up in, Lansingville Fire Station?
You're 1235.
Because I ask, because I don't know that that's gonna be a park and ride anymore. My understanding with the changing the bus schedule, it's not stopping there now.
Okay.
And I think with the new revisioning, that it's not going to be stopping there anymore, is what my read of the situation is. So that should coordinate.
Okay, that's a good point. It's, obviously. So
Passengers.
There are a lot, there are a couple, but just happens to impact us. What level chargers are these? Are these like the level 2?
Yep, that's right. The level ones are, kind of massive energy, and then the little ones are just trickle. The addresses would be 1189 Auburn Road and 1235 Ridge Road were the addresses that the fire district specifically requested, but that's a good point to be coordinating with TCAP.
It's useful to have there, but don't assume that it's a park and ride. We should check that.
Okay, understood. Yeah, thanks for that. Oh, and in unrelated, but sort of related transportation news and sad transportation news, if you're not aware of it already, the Salmon Creek Bridge is not going to open until June 2022. Okay, yeah, everybody got that memo? Okay. Good.
And the one other thing is, at the last meeting when we were discussing the possibility of a moratorium, you were gonna bring to us sort of what the timeline would look like for changing, the next steps for changing the next steps of zoning. I'm wondering where you stand with that and what the timeline might look like.
Yeah, so I'm sorry that we didn't get to record the last meeting at the June 12th, July 12th, planning board meeting. We dedicated much of the meeting actually to talk about scope of changes for zoning. And so we've come up with a preliminary list running from this August through October, from starting at the usual place: code and planning joint draft, followed by planning board review, town attorney preliminary review, code enforcement review, and then a final review by the planning board. They would like to focus on short-term rentals, and I think that's something that we can whip up for their review in August. But if it's the preference of this board to move RA in front of all that, the intention was to go with short-term rental regulations, which include basic safety affidavits, owner, local management, visibly posted or somewhere we could find it. And we're trying to dovetail that with the county's process on short-term rentals. They've just kicked off this monitoring and analytics program with LTAS. I'm hoping to get an update from Heather on that tomorrow. We've received, as a department and also from the planning board, significant concerns about short-term rentals and wanting a modicum of regulation around those. But that said, so next steps after that, I would like them to review that in August. And then at the September meeting, I'd like them to review the RA district zoning changes, consider floating business zones as part of that, as well as cannabis regulations, possible time, place, manner, or opt-out, as well as site plan updates and design review, as well as possibly any low-hanging fruit from the zoning audit that we spent months reviewing. In essence, I had to dig up the work the Agricultural and Farmland Protection Committee did and make sense of that and turn it into, you know, essentially a product for them to review. So I'm anticipating that, like I said, short-term rentals at their August meeting, as well as starting to talk about and finalize some of the scope of work for the RA zone, really get an understanding from them about the future land use map, because when I look at the future land use map, I'm not necessarily seeing, you know, as much of a distinction between the areas that would be kept RA and areas that would change, mostly along the corridors, but I'm not, you know, I'm not entirely sure that the intention was to have those corridors entirely subject to commercial uses, which I think maybe gets at the heart of your concern. So that's kind of what I see this going forward. Now that I don't have to deal with development review, not that I don't really enjoy site plan and subdivision, all that, I don't mean to insinuate. But it's obviously, you know, significant. It's half my workload. I'm now able to shift gears and move towards that. So I'm seeing, you know, Ag Committee review, they're going to be coming back into meeting again now that summer, well, towards, you know, fall, they'll want to meet again. I want to time it so that they can meet and review at least at a couple meetings of any changes to RA. I wouldn't even imagine making changes to RA without having the agricultural committee's eyes on it. That's just not within the realm of possibility, and that's going to be more like October, November. So that's kind of the end of the year, I think that's going to capture a lot of the changes, and of course you can provide something more you know, more tailored for you, but that's really, right now I've been focusing on getting Scott and John just onboarded, and then the grant season, just getting that wrapped up so I can shift my attention to that, so.
And so would that bring it back to us in December, are you thinking? Or
Yeah.
when would it come for us to update that?
Yeah, I'd like you guys to be looking in November and December at blocks of time. November, budget, you know, necessarily, I know we gotta go to final budget in November. So December, we have to pass something related to cannabis in December. There's like no choice related to that. It's either opt out or do something by December 15th, basically. So that's really the plan here for third and fourth quarters of the year, is to have them get that drafted, go through all the committees, including Conservation Advisory Council, Ag Committee, and then, of course, department review, town council review, and get it to a place where, you know, it will be in front of you, and you guys can take some time to deliberate it. But, yeah, I would plan on a, you know, December meeting that's you know, full of zoning. But like I mentioned to you before, I'd like zoning changes to not be this once-in-a-lifetime event, you know, one-time only kind of thing. I think zoning changes should be made fairly frequently. Quarterly would be a good schedule so that we can catch some of these smaller things that we want to change, possibly revive the codes committee. That's something that Ed's been asking me about. And so, you know, now I'll have a little bit of the bandwidth to do that, so. I hope.
John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that as to what happened with the byway revision.
Yeah.
That whole schedule, because I didn't hear it mentioned.
I included it as part of the RA. I think that we're still trying to sort out the extent of design review with the planning board. I think that they're leaning more towards having design review apply for, say, commercial, large multifamily, industrial projects, maybe not industrial project, but large-scale projects, all across the town. I think that they're not necessarily thinking about limiting it there. And I'm not sure about the geographic extent either. It's kind of turning into a Goldilocks thing of like, it's too much scenic overlay, not enough scenic overlay. I think we need to hone in on that a little bit. So one of our Conservation Advisory Council members, Karen Bellestein, has been very gracious about putting together all the maps and data. I'm going to need to transfer that over to the town so that we can actually take ownership of that now that we'll have a little more GIS capacity here. So we'll be able to make maps on the fly a little bit easier. So that's definitely in the works. You know, where exactly it's going to fall in this review process, I'm not sure, but I think that's going to come out of this conversation pretty naturally.
Doug, okay?
I'm fine.
Okay. Good. Thank you, CJ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Okay, there's no engineers report and there's no ag committee report. So we're going to go down to 17, the consent agenda. And there are 6 items. And does each board member just recite them, or do you want to do it?
I don't. No, you should pick somebody to read 2 or 3 of the titles of them.
Do you want us to move it first or after?
No,
We have to, yeah. Okay, Joe, why don't you do A and B, and then C and D is brown one, and E and F is duck. Let's do it that way.
Resolution adopting local law number 2 of 2021 to override the tax levy limit. Resolution hiring third-party constable for the Lansing Town Court.
C is resolution authorizing settlement and payment of Verizon utility cable claim. D is resolution adopting the Town of Lansing Natural Resources Inventory and Scenic Resources Inventory.
E is resolution making secret declaration of lead agency for Salmon Creek Stream Bank Stabilization Water Quality Improvement Project. And F is resolution approving audit and budget modifications and supervisor's report.
Okay, can I have a motion, please?
You got it.
Thank you, Doug. Second? Joe seconds it.
Doug Day,
Yes.
Brian Willosi,
Aye.
Joseph Butmore,
Yes.
Amber Benson,
Yes. Okay, now we're looking at Resolution 18. Resolution granting a waiver from the requirements of the Town of Lansing Land Use Ordinance Plan Development Area Number 1, Village Circles, Village Solars. I would like to table this. I would like to read a little bit more of this that Ruth gave us. So that's my opinion. Table it till next month.
I would like to have something, when you do that, I'd like to participate in a discussion with you, because a lot of what Ruth told you tonight was very misleading.
Okay, okay.
I mean, just to be frank, she described the trail as smaller with fewer features, when in fact we lengthened the trail and we added a 12-station exercise trail to it. So it's a little bit longer with more features. We're very excited about it.
Does anybody else agree with me? Because if they don't, we'll...
I'm fine tabling it. I wouldn't mind if they want to talk about it and give us a presentation. I think that would be fair.
Next month?
No, they do it this month too, if they're here. If they want to tell us something about it, I'm open to listening. But I'm not satisfied with the replacement parts. I'm not, and I do want to talk to them more about it.
Oh, okay, so you, all right.
Well, I could
Would
say
that be
something right now. First of all, we completed the Community East-West Trail, which was a big item that Ruth was interested in at the time. The mysterious people she talked about were me and my son. My son was the architect. He actually mapped out a route all the way down to the lake west of this site. Not 1 foot of that has been happening beyond this project. When Mr. Cardamone did his project, the town didn't ask for that to be extended there. When Cordros did his project to the east, they didn't ask for that to be extended. So you didn't get that part of the story. The amenity trails that are around the stormwater facilities have all been built as we've gone along. We've added fountains. They're actually colored fountains that the population likes very much. They're very much used, and they were part of the original plan. The biggest problem was the circumferential residential trail. As we came up with a different product in time and decided to knock down the old 50-year-old buildings and build new buildings, some of the actual trails, particularly on the north end of the site, cannot be built because they would go right through a building at this point. So there's a need to revise this plan, and as Rocco just said, we've extended it so that it's 0.05 miles longer. We made it into a recreation trail, much like if you've been down in Cass Park where you have recreation. There's a 2-mile recreation trail there with different recreation exercise stations. There would be 12 different exercise stations along this trail. At the 10th mile point of this trail, we'd mark it as the 10th mile, the 0.2 mile, the 0.3 mile, and at those points, there would be a map showing you where you were on that trail, so that the latest comment from the planning board was, how do you know where the trail is and how you're entering onto it? So there would be a map. Then there's been this issue of extending to the north or south of the project. Joe knows from being at the planning board meeting that we added routes on the south end, but then when I went back to the planning board, I actually added back the trail that was along Warren Road if and when it goes someplace. Right now it goes no place, and it hasn't gone any place since 2010. There was a lot of wishful thinking at the time. I understand that there's a new interest in pathways, but there was a period of time when nothing happened north or south. So what we did with the planning board the last time was add back in the connections out to Warren Road that I hadn't had in the first meeting with the planning board, so that if things extended to the north and south, you would have a connection to the very end of the project. I've still left that paved path along Warren Road. I'm telling you quite honestly, I don't like it. I don't think it's safe. And one of the reasons for showing you the alternative circumferential route is a much safer internal route for the local residents. I've been on that Warren Road surveying for 11 years now, and I'm 7.5 feet from the travel from those vehicles. And if those vehicles aren't going 50 or 55 miles an hour up and down that road, I'll eat my words. So there's more than wanting to change it. I think there's a safety issue here, and we've been trying to enhance the whole project. I mean, there's always the criticism that you're trying to do less than you were approved for in the first place, but we've added a dog park. We made the basketball court much more bigger than it was. We've added picnic areas along this Amenity Trail and around the ponds. That one of the co-owners, one of Hussein, runs a landscape company. Now, if you look at the landscape plan and you look at the landscaping out there, you'll see it's 1.5 times what was promised in landscaping. So, we're far from trying, we have a whole program now of people that's associated with the community building. We have food trucks that will come in 3 times a week. I mean, we really tried to do more than we promised to do in the first place. And some of you have been here 11 years. I'm one of the people who's been here 11 years. And anything that's the same as it was 11 years ago, I don't know, other than the few people that have been around that long. Even in the last 2 years, it's been a challenge to follow through on everything, but we've done so, and I think we've got one of the nicest projects in the county, and that's my appeal to you.
Thank you for explaining it. So, do we want to vote on it? We can.
I would actually like to table it and spend some time massaging it. I'm not criticizing you guys and saying you're not doing enough. I think that we can do a better plan than what you've outlined here. And I've been trying to get together with Rocco, and we've been trying to set up a time, and our schedules don't match very well at the moment. I've set several times. It's always sometime that you're coaching football, baseball, I forget which one.
Yeah, or on Monday mornings.
Yeah, exactly. Those are my free time. So we're trying to get together. It just hasn't been working.
We're happy to walk you through the process.
But that's what we want to do, is we want to walk around and say,
I would like to walk through the project if I have time.
Absolutely, and if any of you folks want to come walk through it, we'd be very happy to walk you through and take any ideas that anybody has. I mean, really the idea here with the new trail reroute is that people are now going to be able to walk within the exterior landscaping a little bit further away from the road, which will, reduce the noise pollution from the road. It will reduce the visual, pollution, I guess you could argue, of the road, and you'd be a little bit in a more rural of a feel, a little bit more of a residential type feel because of the blue part. But, as Larry points out, we still do have the green in there if it were to ever come to pass. But, like you said, back in, I think it was 2011 when the trails were being proposed, there was the idea that there was going to be a little bit more, there was going to be something to connect into, and that has not yet materialized. We remain certainly committed to doing our part, and that should have materialized. And I think that this map, does reflect that. But, certainly between now and the next meeting, any concerns any of you have, or if any of you want to walk around the project, and, I'd be happy to talk to any of you folks about any of it. The only thing that I would caution is that we would like to get it done by the next meeting, because if we're not able to get the waiver by the next meeting, then it could put our construction schedule into complication if we have to wait until September 4th. Because our second building is contingent on the trails plan being approved, so that would be my only caution.
I was going to add to that by saying a lot of this plan would be done this year if we could come to an understanding. Because if it gets put off till next spring, it'll be a rush. Right now, we have a window of time to get at it.
Okay.
Well, I propose that we table this and then we try to get a group meeting in which several of us express interest, Andrea, and I don't know if other people want to get together with Rocco and anybody else. And I think walking these things will make it much better to just stand here and say, this is, I can look at maps, I can look at, online pictures of it, but it's not the same as standing there and saying, how does it feel walking through here? And we can, walk around and just say, does this work? Where do you think this, and we'll work down to that detail and say, this is what I'm comfortable with. And I think that would make me feel better. And I'd love to have you come with us to talk about it in person.
Okay, sounds good. And we will get to it. We're not going to.
Absolutely, I didn't mean to imply that you wouldn't. I just want to be cautious about the fact that, it might not necessarily be urgent right now for our construction schedule, but in a month it will be. So I just want the board to be aware.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, number 19, resolution authorizing grant applications to implement Myers Road revitalization project.
I'll move it.
Myers Park, I'm sorry.
I'll still move it.
He's still moving. Okay, I'm good. Brown's going to second it. Okay. Any discussion? Good. Then let us vote.
Doug Day?
Yes.
Ron Velosi? Yes. Joseph Wetmore?
Yes.
Andrew Benson?
Yes. On to 20, resolution approving application for funding from New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation for the purpose of funding the development of the town of Lansing Myers Park revitalization project. Can I get a motion?
Sure.
I'll second.
Okay. What?
Discussion.
Yes, I know that, there's discussion. No, I was just looking your way. I'm sorry. I'm telling you. No, is there any discussion? No, we're all in favor of this.
Doug Day?
Yes.
Ron Velosi? Yes. Joseph Wetmore?
Yes.
Andrew Benson?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to recess it before our board member reports, or should we do it before? I don't know how long these are going to be.
Mine is going to be long.
What?
Mine will be long.
Yours?
Joe took care of part of it.
Yours isn't going to be long?
No, and all we did was meet last week.
How much are we going to talk, otherwise we're going to stop now?
Let's stop now, because I want to talk about the American Rescue Funds a little bit,
Okay.
so let's take a break.
We're just going to take a 10-minute break.
Good night, Abby.
We don't have to do a motion. You guys don't. You can go.
So here's what I'm gonna say,
Thank you for.
if you're gonna take a break,
Yes.
No problem.
then I'm
4 o'clock
gonna
comes
leave, and you're gonna shut this switch.
Oh, heaven forbid.
it.
Right here?
Yep.
That's all they have to do?
Well, we're gonna do it now, if we're gonna take a break.
Yes.
You're off.